dear viewers, greetings in the love of God, who is all-knowing and wise and compassionate, who knows and understands us better than we know and understand ourselves, in whom we live and move and have our being, as St. Paul tells us, recorded in Acts chapter 17, verse 28. Such is evidenced in the life of St. Monica, or Monica of Hippo, best known as the mother of St. Augustine, and indeed famous for how she won the conversion of her son by her constant prayer for him. But there are other facets to her life of virtue that are little spoken of, and indeed quite unheard of. Born in 331 AD in Tagaste, North Africa, or present-day Algeria, Monica lived with her family, but was raised along with her sisters by an elderly and wise maid who had also raised Monica's father. As a young girl, Monica was required to bring up wine from the cellar for her parents. One day, she took a sip of the wine before she brought it up. She gradually began to drink just a little more each day. She thought no one knew about it. But one day, Monica quarreled with one of the helpers, who then accused her of drinking too much. Monica realized that the helper was right. This helped her to face this temptation, and she immediately decided to stop drinking and promptly did so. She is therefore regarded as the patron of alcoholics. Monica was raised Christian, but at a young age was given in marriage to a licentious, adulterous pagan or non-Christian, a Roman government official named Patricius. They had 3 children, Augustine, Nevigius, and Perpetua. To Monica's distress, she was unable to baptize her children. When Augustine fell seriously ill, Monica's distress was so great, she pleaded with Patricius to allow their son to be baptized. He agreed, but withdrew his permission when Augustine recovered. Monica was generous in almsgiving. While her piety and habit of prayer and her Christian deeds of charity annoyed Patricius and drew his criticism, he is said to have respected her and her beliefs and held her in a sort of reverence. But Patricius had a violent temper, as did his mother, who also lived with them, and the flare-up of tempers of the two proved to be a constant challenge to the young Monica. But she remained patient. Furthermore, in their early years of marriage, Monica's mother-in-law turned against her because of ugly rumors spread by unhappy servants. Are there wives who have a troublesome mother-in-law and long for independence from the yoke of dominance, who would pin their happiness perhaps on being rid of the situation? Monica lived otherwise. Through patient forgiveness, she was able to win her mother-in-law's cooperation, and more, as we shall see. There was a gulf between Monica and her husband, who not only did not share her faith, which brought her sorrow, but who also led an adulterous life. We think of wives who have an unfaithful husband. The natural response is to berate the other, bemoan one's lot, given to self-pity and thoughts of a wasted life, perhaps venting out one's frustration to any sympathetic ear and giving in to despair, because no one can help, not even God seems to act soon enough. But through it all, Monica was an example of patience. This drew other wives with marital problems to seek her advice. She witnessed by her life. Monica prayed for years for her husband and mother-in-law. Her prayers and powerful example finally won them to Christianity. The bond of the sacrament of marriage empowers the couple to be an instrument for the sanctification of each other. In Monica's case, she served to bring about the conversion of her husband, and not only her husband, but also the family, her mother-in-law and her children, as we shall see further. Her husband died a year after his baptism, and Monica resolved not to marry again. As time passed, Perpetua and Navigius entered the religious life. But unfortunately, Augustine was wayward and, as he himself wrote, lazy. This greatly worried Monica. So when Patricius died, she sent the 17-year-old Augustine to Carthage for schooling, where he became a rhetoric student, that is, eloquence in oratory and debating skills, and there, unfortunately, fell into a dissolute lifestyle, entering into an illicit, long-standing relationship with a woman to whom he remained faithful, but who was below his social standing and therefore could not marry, even though she bore him a son. Furthermore, he got influenced by the Manichaean heresy, which professed a struggle between a good spiritual world of light and an evil material world of darkness. All flesh is evil, thus excusing his sins as caused by evil while aspiring to good. After Augustine got his education and returned home, Monica was distressed to learn that her son was living an immoral life and had accepted the Manichaean heresy. When he shared his views with Monica, she banished him from home. This brilliant and gifted young man had rejected the faith his mother had taught him. She was ready to disown Augustine, but while he may not have been in her home, he was always in her heart. With fasting and prayer, she asked God to save her son. Monica went to a bishop who encouraged her, saying, "God's time will come. Go now, I beg you. It is not possible that the son of so many tears should perish." Then one night she had a vision in which she was assured that Augustine would return to the faith. From that time on, she reconciled with her wayward son. She allowed him back and stayed close to him, praying and fasting for him. In fact, she often stayed much closer than Augustine wanted. He rejected her on multiple occasions, but she continued to love, pray, and nurture her son throughout his wayward years. She felt discouraged, but never gave up. It is good for mothers and fathers, particularly Christian parents, to reflect on one's attitude and involvement in the faith life of the children versus their educational and professional success. Are we truly concerned about the faith of our children? Do we take time off to ensure that their life is centered in God? Or does their life of faith get sidelined and take a back seat to their prowess in education and careers and rewarding positions in life? Do parents later lament the lack of faith of their children and perhaps shrug their shoulders in helplessness when they seem to make no headway? Monica is an excellent example whose first and true concern was her children's faith in the one true God, praying incessantly with fasting. When he was 29, Augustine decided to go to Rome to teach rhetoric. Monica was determined to go along with him. However, Augustine told his mother that he was going to the dock to say goodbye to a friend, but instead he set sail for Rome. Monica was heartbroken when she learned that she had been tricked, but she still followed him. She arrived in Rome only to find that he had left for Milan. Although travel was difficult, Monica pursued him to Milan and eventually came upon St. Ambrose, who became her spiritual director. She accepted his advice in everything and had the humility to give up some practices that had become part of her lifestyle. Here too, Monica became a leader of the devout women in Milan, as she had been in Tagaste. God had his plans for Augustine, which began now to fall in place. In Milan, Augustine came under the influence of the bishop St. Ambrose. Monica continued her prayers for Augustine during his years of instruction, and through St. Ambrose, she ultimately had the joy, after 17 years of tears, constant prayer and sacrifice, and as many years of resistance from her son, of seeing Augustine yield to Christianity. Mother and son spent 6 months of true peace, and Augustine was baptized at the age of 32 by St. Ambrose at Easter in the Church of St. John the Baptist in Milan. It was under Ambrose's guidance that Augustine fulfilled his potential and became one of the most brilliant writers and thinkers the Church has ever known. Soon after they left for Africa, where Augustine felt called to go, stopping on the way at Civitavecchia and at Ostia Antica, Monica now realized that her life was near the end. She was satisfied that her purpose in life had been achieved. Her greatest desire in life, to see her son's conversion to Catholicism, had been fulfilled. She told Augustine, "Son, nothing in this world now affords me delight. I do not know what there is now left for me to do or why I am still here, all my hopes in this world being now fulfilled." It was at Ostia that she became ill shortly after and suffered severely for 9 days with a fever that caused her death. The finest pages of his Confessions were penned as the result of the emotion Augustine experienced at this time. Almost all we know about St. Monica is in the writings of St. Augustine, especially his Confessions. Looking back, he said, "She watered the earth with her tears for her son, praying more for his spiritual death than most mothers pray over the physical death of a child. It was my soul's doom she was lamenting. Would that mothers and parents would weep for their wayward children with prayer and fasting, that they may return to the love of God and experience what St. Augustine penned. Our hearts were made for you, O Lord, and they are restless until they rest in you." Monica was buried at Ostia, and her body was removed during the 6th century to a hidden crypt in the church of Santa Aurea in Ostia, near the tomb of Saint Aurea. In 1430, Pope Martin V ordered her relics to be brought to Rome, and many miracles were reported to have occurred along the way. Later, a church was built to honor St. Augustine, the Basilica di Sant'Agostino, where her relics were placed in a chapel to the left of the high altar. It is fitting that their feast days are placed one following the other. The circumstances of St. Monica's life could have made her a nagging wife, a bitter daughter-in-law, and a despairing parent. Yet she did not give way to any of these temptations, but became for all a model of heroic virtue of patience, faithfulness, humility, and above all, she stands out for her persistence in prayer despite the seeming odds, bringing about the conversion of a hot-tempered and unfaithful husband, a hot-tempered and difficult mother-in-law, and perhaps the most trying of all, the conversion of her brilliant but wayward son, Augustine. St. Monica is the patron saint of married women, wives, mothers, of conversions, alcoholics, and victims of abuse and adultery. She is a great example of faith and hope, persistence in seeking the mercy of God in the seemingly impossible situations of life, particularly where we experience that our children have wandered far from God and have gone astray, even when it would seem that God is not present to us in these situations. Jesus himself urged us to be persistent in prayer. We have that in the Gospel according to St. Luke, chapter 11, verses 5 to 13, chapter 18, verses 1 to 7. God's grace is infinite, and he will never abandon us, for, as Jesus said, he came to seek and find and save that which was lost. As he would so often teach in his parables of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son, given in Luke chapter 15, and in life instances of the Samaritan woman at the well and the woman caught in adultery, St. John's Gospel chapter 4 and 8, respectively. of the call of Matthew, Matthew chapter 9, verse 13, and of Zacchaeus, Luke chapter 19, verse 10, amongst so many others. He came to save each one of us, you and me. Let us pray through the intercession of Monica for our families, spouse, and children, that we may savor the love and mercy of God, as in the words of her great son, St. Augustine, Bishop and Doctor of the Church, we acknowledge once again. Our hearts were made for you, O Lord, and they are restless until they rest in you. God bless us as we place all our hope in him. Amen.